Good evening. Welcome. It's an honor to be here to present Joy this evening. I'm Anna Batchelder. I'm co-founder of Bond Education. We're the education partner of this shelter. Before I hand over the mic, I just want to make a couple of announcements about the shelter and our speaker this evening. For those of you that are new to the shelter is meant to be a hub for entrepreneurs, small business, people with projects, and people with great ideas to work from for free during the day. So if you need a space to work on your next idea or project, come join us. We're here 6 days a week. In the evening times, we organize a number of educational programs, such as this talk. We do master classes, panel discussions, and more. And in the new year, we'll be doing a number of daytime programming for entrepreneurs and small businesses as well. To keep up to date with us, you can check our chalkboard in the back or look for Shelter Dubai on Facebook. And for those of you that want to tweet this evening's event, the password for the internet is 11223344. It's always that password, so you can use it for free whenever you're here. And just if you want to mention Shelter Dubai, it's at ShelterDXB. And Joy's Twitter handle is at JOI. If you are interested in hosting an event or sponsoring an event, you can talk to myself, Mary, or Chris, who's running around here somewhere. And so let me introduce Joy. Joy is director of the MIT Media Lab. He was an early investor in several successful companies. You might have heard them. Twitter, Technorati, Last.fm, Kickstarter, and I'm sure some more. He's chair of Creative Commons. He's on the board of the Knight Foundation, and Business Week, Newsweek, and lots of other publications are always talking about how Joy's a business guru. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over the mic. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. So, can I find out, first of all, how many of you are entrepreneurs? About students? How about working professionals? Okay. All right, thanks. And how about government? Okay. Okay. So I'll try to finish probably 30 minutes, and I'll try to leave a lot of time for discussion, so we can talk about some of this stuff. And this is actually, right, people who have watched videos of my talks, this is actually going to be somewhat redundant. I apologize. I'm giving too many talks to change it too much each time. But I want to first start by establishing a couple of really basic ideas that I think are really important. And I think that the internet has impacted and will impact us more than just about anything that's going to happen in our lifetime. And it's really, I think, another step in the evolution of man and society right now. So for me personally, I split my life to stuff for the world, stuff that happened before the internet, BI, stuff that happened after the internet, AI. But before the internet, life was simple, things moved slowly, and you kind of figure everything out and control things. And after the internet, things became complex, fast, out of control, but actually very exciting. And I think that the way we think about the world is fundamentally different. And I think it's important also to remember that the internet, or remember to understand that the internet is not a thing, it's not a technology, it's actually a philosophy, a belief system, kind of a way of life. So, in that context, I want to frame this whole conversation around innovation with the idea that the internet is changing everything, and that we have to understand what that means. So to understand what that means, I'm going to start all the way back to kind of the beginning of the internet. I was working on the first commercial internet service provider in Japan. And this is the way that innovation worked or works before internet. So you have governments and large companies, and this laser's kind of bright, and they hire experts who are very qualified people from government and big companies to go to these international standards bodies that usually hang off the UN. So ITU is part of the UN. Before ITU, there was a organization called CCITT, it's a predecessor. So in the early days of internet, there was actually a struggle between X25, which was like the internet, but it was being designed by this government by the CCITT, and then there was the internet. And what happens in this system is that all the experts get together and try to anticipate every problem and think about every possible application, and they specify all of the parameters into what we call specs. And the specs are, often meters high. And so no one person could ever read and understand the entire specs. So what happens is then large contractors and large R&D labs render these specifications into hardware and software and services. So a good example is like our 3G networks and things like that go through this system, and then these products and services are consumed by us, consumer, and then the fees and taxes go up, and this goes around and around. And this is not a bad system if you're building infrastructure that you can't change later, because you want to make sure you get it right. And so for things like telephone networks, this is kind of how it happened. It turns out that the internet was mostly software, and you could actually change it as you went along. And so for software, the way that the internet worked was we all went on mailing lists, and we talked to each other, and it was a flat organization. So a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old could participate in a mailing list, come up with ideas, very much a meritocracy. And we made all of our standards kind of in the open, and the software was open, and it was a somewhat chaotic, but a very distributed process. And we know that the internet won, right? Because X25, we've used it for credit cards and things like that, but fundamentally X25 disappeared, internet won. It was the triumph of distributed innovation over centrally planned innovation. Because all the key players that actually built the internet were the little guys. Right? That's really important. And then the other important part is, instead of having these intergovernmental agencies with experts, most of the standards on the internet, this is actually called a stack. So the Internet Engineering Task Force, then we have the World Wide Web. So the Internet Engineering Task Force does the network stuff, like the Internet Protocol. And then the World Wide Web Consortium that was started by Sir Tim Berners-Lee, this is the place where we work on things like HTML, web standards. And Creative Commons, which I used to run and chair now, we're doing interoperability at the legal layer. So it allows Al Jazeera and the White House and Wikipedia to interoperate. And all of this is about creating standards, lightweight standards that allow interoperability and allow access without asking permission, which is a really key thing about the internet. The internet, the old world was about experts who had permission, and if you didn't have permission, in the old days you couldn't connect things to your phone line unless they had government stamp on it. And you couldn't open the telephone switch, it was locked. Today it's locked. The lock boxes are locked. The internet is about having access, innovating without asking permission. And these bodies are non-governmental, and anyone can participate, and they're usually small nonprofits. So these guys, and there's actually other organizations like ICANN and others, but these standards are basically stewarded by small organizations. And what happened with this stack, the other part about being able to participate without asking permission, it means you can compete without asking permission. So 3Com created switches, Cisco created routers, ISP created networks, and eBay created markets. All these people come in and are disruptive, and they take away the fat. They take, one person's revenue is another person's fat. So for some of the companies it was tough because they're getting disintermediated and the revenues were going down. But fundamentally for the user it was a great thing because the cost of collaboration, the cost of communication, and the cost of production went down nearly to zero. And with Moore's Law, the computers got cheaper as well. So this camera here, that's taking a picture of me. Can you imagine what this was like before we had Moore's Law? And so the cost of making stuff went down. And if the cost of making stuff and distributing and collaboration goes nearly to zero, then what happens is the cost of innovation goes down and it reduces the risk.